guys, Marstinkin here, bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so today we are going to talk about the best TUR in the game. Now, before you get your hopes up and think, you know, oh, is he going to pick the same one that I think is the best TUR? I'm not actually talking about the unit that is the best TUR in the game. I am talking about the concept of the best TUR in the game. Now, this is something that I've discussed with people a bunch on Twitter. We've talked about it on the podcast. You know, this topic comes up a lot, especially at times at the moment where Dokkan is quite dry and we're waiting for new stuff. A lot of people have been making tier lists, reacting to other people's tier lists, myself included, because it's always something that draws up a lot of attention. It's no secret when it comes to not just YouTube but content creation in general that controversy gets clicks, and obviously nothing gets more controversy than putting out an opinion on one unit being better than another unit, because all the people who don't agree are going to flock to tell you their opinion. So this video is not, as I say, about who is the best TUR in the game. It is about the concept of being the best TUR in the game. And honestly, it seeks to ask the question, as I have often discussed, as I said, is there even actually a best TUR in the game? And how exactly do you quantify that? Now, the reason I came up with the idea for doing this video is, again, people have been posting tier lists a lot lately. I've seen quite a few posted today. Some of them not by YouTubers, but just by like mutuals on Twitter and stuff. But one comment in particular, and I forget who it is. I'm not going to look it up because this isn't supposed to be like a detrimental comment to this person, even though I don't really agree with what they said, but somebody put a comment on one of the posts that I made. I think it was just multiple comments down a chain, saying that a certain unit in particular is factually the best TUR in the game, and anyone who disagrees is stupid. Now, obviously, this is the kind of thing that people say online. People are very quick to throw out insults about other people's opinions, but the thing is, I don't agree that you can potentially even have a unit that is factually the best TUR in the game, right? Because I feel like for everybody to agree that a unit is factually the best TUR, they would have to be able to tank in every single event, do ridiculous damage even from turn 1, have utility like dodge, guard, counter, scouter effect, something like that, have ridiculously good link set, and be on multiple categories, because all of those things that I just listed are all examples that people will cite as to why a unit either is or isn't the best TUR, because they either have some of those things or that they don't have some of those particular things, and so that makes them either the best or not possibly the best. So there's a couple of units in the current meta that I want to go over in this video that I see argued about as the best TUR in the game, and the reasons behind that and my thoughts on each of those units. So the first one we're going to start off with is obviously Captain Ginyu. Captain Ginyu, when he came out on JP, was heralded as the new best TUR in the game. He's just come out on Global, so Global players get to enjoy him as well, and he still very frequently is at number 1 in people's tier lists. Now, what is the reason for that? Well, obviously he's a 200% leader. There's a lot of interesting units on his 200% team. The Ginyu Force, in particular, has been getting a huge amount of buffs. The free-to-play units are really good. The free-to-play LRs have both easy aid on JP. His side banner units are really good and have really good synergy with him, which is another important factor of units. But there's also a couple of things that aren't so great about him. Now, going again with the positives, he infinitely stacks defense before transforming, which means obviously in longer form events. I mean, I've seen screenshots not even that many turns into events where he's got realistic support that you'd actually run in hard content, where he's at ridiculous amounts of defense, like quite early on, which is obviously very good. He's also a support unit for Ginyu Force allies, which are some of the most prominent allies that you want to run with him on the team anyway. And then he also has attacks effective against all types if there's a Ginyu Force ally on the team. So his damage output, even in this early phase before he starts stacking attack, is obviously very, very powerful. Then he has an active skill which can be activated when HP is 70% or less starting from turn 4, which is pretty easy to get to in everything except for really short content. Although I say that, but in some of the easier longer form events, like on his team, it can actually be hard to lose that much HP unless you get unlucky with, you know, who gets super attacked. So when he transforms, not only do you get a heal, which is always nice for characters that have a transformation condition based on being under a certain amount of HP, because then it tops you back up to max, but then he starts infinitely stacking attack, so the earlier you do that, obviously the crazier his attack stats can become. He has the possibility to build in additional in both of his forms. He gets a lot of raw stats, and then he has a built-in chance to dodge and built-in chance to crit that builds up over time. So he's another one of these units. I know when it comes to best units in the game, everybody really only discusses the units at full potential. So that is all we are going to be really taking into account here is rainbow stuff. But even at 55%, he has the potential to do all the hidden potential abilities, which is obviously very, very good. And then he does also have a high chance to foresee enemy super attacks if there is a Jace on the team after he transforms. So a lot of the arguments for this guy, you know, his base stats are really good. His attack and defense as they build up are really good. He can be effective against all types, which is great for dealing damage. And he can have the Scouter effect, which is arguably one of the most powerful mechanics in the game, because a stray super attack on the wrong unit is pretty much the reason why you lose difficult events. So having the Scouter effect helps you to get around that. So Ginyu is obviously very, very good. Now the downsides to him, which people will comment, is of course his link set. Not the best for units outside of the Ginyu force, which is always a shame for a unit who is a leader of a team, especially a 200% team, because if you want to start running other rotations of some of the good units that are under his leader skill, it means you're going to end up with one or both of the Ginyus floating, and then they don't really do much for the team when they float into slot 3. Certain rotations you might want to run, like say you want to run like, I don't know, LR Bojack and STR Bojack, they're not going to share like any links with him except for like Fierce Battle, which is obviously not ideal. And then a lot of people also point to the fact that he's only he's one of the units I always see the quote that he's only good on one team, which is essentially his team. But the thing is, his team, which is like him, the side banner units, the LR Ginyu Force units, and then whichever of the free-to-play ones you want to bring, like Jace is really good, the actual Ginyu is good, Rakum is good. It's only really Berta and Guldo that you probably wouldn't bring into slightly more difficult content. But that team that is basically the Ginyu Force is the Ginyu Force, Planet Namek Saga, Dragon Ball Seekers, Terrifying Conquerors, Special Pose, and Space Traveling Warriors. Like the Ginyu Force team, even though it is quote-unquote one team, it's actually 6 different category teams. So in terms of, like, you know, events that actually restrict you, whether it be Super Battle Road, where you can only bring units of those categories, or missions for, like, the Goku event, or future Infinite Dragon Ball History, stuff like that, they count as 6 different teams, even though it is one team. So I get the argument sometimes, because, you know, for me, a lot of the fun in the game is team building, and when I pull a new unit, I want to use them on a bunch of different teams, if possible. So I do see that argument, but the idea that he, like, is only good for one team, that team can be used to do a ton of different things. So Ginyu is very, very good. But let's move on to another new top contender, which is the AGL Cell. Now, AGL Cell is an absolute beast in Super Battle Road, because in his first form, he gets a lot of extra stats and abilities when you're fighting against multiple enemies. He raises attack infinitely, raises defense for 1 turn. Now, obviously, the immediate downside for him is that he's not super great in slot 1, especially early on. And even against multiple enemies, like if you're not getting the dodge off, then he can take a lot of damage from a super attack. But the same thing can be said of Ginyu. You take him into Terrifying Conqueror Super Battle Road, and he eats a super attack turn 1. He's going to take a lot of damage. Now, Cell does have some better links. He has big bad bosses for a start. Nightmare, which is a fairly common villain link. Obviously, Fierce Battle. Shocking Speed is not a bad one either. And then when it comes to categories, androids, Transformation Boost, Time Travelers, Artificial Life Forms. I mean, Time Travelers, the new Super Battle Road, gets ripped apart by him. Artificial Life Forms, Android/Cell Saga, Target Goku, Exploding Rage, Power Absorption. He's on the Sworn Enemies team, which is a good category as well. Accelerated Battle, which is kind of an underrated category. It doesn't have a 200% lead, but it has a lot of really good units on it. And then Worldwide Chaos as well. So each turn he transforms. So you get the second form Cell, and he's pretty solid. Against one enemy, the first form Cell is obviously when he's at his weakest, but he's still very good. Second form Cell then becomes a little bit better because he does get some of the abilities when there's only the one enemy. But once you get up to Perfect Cell, which is only going to be on like his 3rd turn essentially, then he becomes pretty damn crazy. He's got really good start of turn stats, and then any units that have this nowadays are getting a huge boost because this is factored in separately, and it's what can show a huge difference in attack and defense for different units. And then once he gets to this stage, he has the built-in crit and the built-in dodge. He's an AGL unit, so he has additional. So just like the point we made with Ginyu, even though you don't want to necessarily rate units that way, at 55%, he can do everything in the hidden potential system at 55%, which is really, really good. He does also have the rage mode. I've said before I'm not a huge fan of the rage mode, but they did at least make it a little bit better by giving him guaranteed crits, so he can do a little bit of extra damage. But Cell is obviously very, very good. His 200% lead pretty much has like resurrected the androids team, because his team is essentially just an android team. Most androids that are not on Android/Cell Saga are on power absorption. There's only a few androids in the game that don't fit under his leader skill. So he obviously is very, very good on a lot of teams, slightly better links, but obviously he doesn't have quite as much utility. Like in an event where you can't dodge, he definitely doesn't have as much defense in the long run as a unit like Ginyu, doesn't have the scouter effect, but his raw stats and damage are obviously very, very good. Then we move on to another unit who has kind of, when they came out, they were heavily praised. Then they began to drop down the list in people's expectations, because honestly, their leader skill is not particularly great. Worldwide Chaos is not a great category, really. Future Saga obviously is pretty good, but hasn't had buffs for a long time. And then obviously they are only a 170 leader. But this unit has been kind of revitalized because they are on the 200% Cell team. So they're a nuking style unit, but they create the orbs that they need, which realistically nowadays is what you really need a nuking style unit to do. Because even with that ability, you can get screwed over if you get bad luck. But, you know, I did a 200% showcase for these guys the other day when mine were only at 55%, and I got some decent luck with the RNG for the orb changing, and there were literally turns where I was able to pick up like 9 or 10 orbs with them, and then they just look absolutely insane, and that's without using items or any other orb changing unit. So that is really, really good. The only downside to them is when you do get the bad luck with the orbs, they do need to pick up 8 orbs if you really want to get their full attack and defense potential, because they're getting a 70% attack and 80% defense buff respectively with 7 or 8 orbs. So if you get unlucky, then obviously that's going to be bad. You want to prioritize tech orbs because they get 35% attack and defense, whereas non-tech orbs, they only get 18% attack and 17% defense. But these guys can look ridiculous because slot 1, if you pick up a lot of orbs, their base defense is going to be very, very high. And then, of course, they nullify Ki Blast super attacks when your HP is 35% or more. So at the start of an event or something like Super Battle Road, as long as you have Ki Blast enemies and you've got some decent orbs, you can put them in slot 1 and they are insanely good. And then when it comes to utility, they have an active skill. I guess this is also utility, right? Negating Ki Blast supers. But they also have their active skill, which is a 1 target enemy only Ghost Usher. So you can do it straight away against one enemy with whose HP is 35% or more, or when facing 3 or more enemies. So the only time you can't use this on like turn 1 is in a Super Battle Road stage where there's 2 enemies. And then this is effectively a Ghost Usher, but only for 1 enemy. So if there are multiples, you only get to cancel out the attacks of one of them. But, I mean, that's insane still for Super Battle Road, because depending on the rotation that you have, you just pick out the enemy that's going to be the most, like, troublesome for you on that turn, and you just remove all their attacks. They also seal, which is another nice bit of utility, especially for Super Battle Road. Any events where you can seal, sealing is a very powerful effect, because if you're fighting against enemies who don't have a Ki Blast super attack, they obviously can't negate that, but they're able to seal that enemy if possible. Now, like Ginyu, their link set is not the best. Some of their best link partners are some very outdated androids units, so you end up running them alongside, like a really good rotation I run is them with the Injiro and 19. I think they only share 4 links, I want to say. But Injiro and 19 are a really good unit. They're also a support unit for androids, so that rotation does go pretty hard. These guys at Rainbow are hitting insane attack stats with crazy defense, and then they have all this backup utility. I mean, as long as your health is not dropping down, if you're fighting against an enemy with a Ki Blast super attack, you can put these guys in slot 1, pick up a bunch of orbs, and they're basically invincible, because normal attacks are going to do no damage, or double-digit damage, and the super attack is literally going to do no damage. So these guys are a contender because of all the things that they are doing. despite the fact that they also have these downsides. So I feel like, I mean, you can kind of see where I'm going with this, right? Like, all of these units have reasons why they could be the best, as well as reasons why people think they're not the best, which are obviously due to certain limitations. Because the next unit that we have up here is the Super Saiyan 2 Goku that transforms into Super Saiyan 3. And he is kind of like the opposite of Ginyu and potentially the androids, where when he starts off, he's obviously not super great, and he is a slot 2 unit, basically. You can put him in slot 1 if he has type advantage and there's not a ton of attacks, and maybe you want to roll the dice, but he does get a lot of his extra defense on super, because not only does he also have this effect where it's coming from his passive, which is then giving him a bigger buff, but he also raises attack and defense on his super attack effect, as well as having the built-in chance to do additional super attacks. He also has a built-in chance to crit, so he does have some nice utility. Again, even if you have less dupes or no dupes, he can still do a lot of things, which is really good. His category Battle of Fate or Accelerated Battle is not terrible, but the big advantage he has, and the reason why I say he's kind of like the opposite of the androids and Ginyu, is, first of all, look at all the categories that he's on. Majin Buu Saga, which is one of the biggest categories in the game. Super Saiyan 3, Pure Saiyans, Transformation Boost, Goku Family, Kamehameha, Super Saiyan 2. I mean, Turtle School, not so great. Mastered Evolution is decent. Bond of Friendship is mostly Goku, so obviously is a decent category. Accelerated Battle, Battle of Fate, and Beyond Super Saiyan, which is the LR Gods category, which again is one of the biggest categories in the game. So he's on a lot of good categories, but he's also got a ridiculously good link set. This link set for a character that is a Super Saiyan is almost the ideal link set that you want a character to have. So this guy's links and teams are really, really good, and if that's what you choose to value when deciding which unit you think is the best, that's why you can see people putting this guy above units like Ginyu and the androids when they talk about who is the best TUR in the game. And then obviously once he transforms into a Super Saiyan 3, he just becomes even more ridiculous. He greatly raises attack and defense. He can super attack like 4 times in one turn. 70% chance to crit for 6 turns after you transform, for 7 turns, sorry. No, it is for 6 turns, and then it's a 50% after the 7th turn. And so he can do an insane amount of damage whilst also having good defense, but he is a bit of a slave to RNG, because if you get super unlucky and he does a super attack and 3 normals, then he's not going to be tanking very well in, like, you know, red zone stages. Definitely not going to be surviving a super in some of the harder stages. So all of these units have their pluses and their minuses. And then I thought I'd include this last one as a bit of a meme for all the hybrid stands out there. I talked about this on Twitter the other day. TEQ Gohan will probably forever be the unit that people still say every time a new Dokkan Fest exclusive comes out, that TEQ Gohan is better, and try and explain why. But I mean, TEQ Gohan is just a unit that has aged insanely well. He's very, very good defensively in long form events. Like, you know, his defense gets up to an insanely high number, and he guards. And it's the fact that he guards whilst also greatly raising defense on each of his supers. Because guard alone does not an insane tank make. But guard and greatly raising defense on super attack is actually really good. And that's why his defense is super good in the long run. His link set was not great when he came out, and it was one of the things he was heavily chastised for. But as more units have released around him, and the units that you kind of want to run on the teams that he's on, he's starting to share a lot more links with these newer units, which is obviously very good. I mean, the longevity of this unit and how long he has stayed relevant is incredibly impressive when it comes to, like, the length of Dokkan and the lifespan of the game. The major downsides that people don't like, especially like the APT boys and stuff like that, is, you know, turns 1 to 5, maybe even if you want to be uncharitable, if you're not running like supports and stuff, which the hybrids team does have a lot of good support units. His attack stats are obviously not very impressive. Out of the units that we've talked about so far, unless you're getting like no orbs for the androids, this guy's putting out the lowest damage out of all of the units that we've covered so far. But in certain situations, he can be one of the better defensive units of all the units we've talked about, especially in the long run. But units like Ginyu, who's also infinitely stacking, you know, they can rival him at times as well. But the fact that this unit is this old, I mean, he doesn't have an easy A. He came out in 2020 on both versions, July on JP, so he's almost 2 years old, and the fact that people still talk about him in the top tier of TURs really shows that not only does this unit just have good longevity, but it shows basically the whole thing I'm talking about in this video, the fact that people rate units very differently based around how they want to play the game. So whilst you may not agree, or maybe you do, let me know down below in the comment section, but I just wanted to make this video just to talk about this concept and just to ask that question: is there really a best TUR in the game? So let me know what you guys think down below. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. I want to hear all your thoughts. If you do think there is a best TUR, let me know who you think it is and why. And let me know your thoughts just on the subject in general. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.